A 20-year-old university student, just vanishes into the mountainous forests of Kyoto, Japan. But the trigger for this disappearance wasn't getting physically lost, and it wasn't a random crime. It was actually a heated argument with his mother over the environmental impact of using ChatGPT to navigate their family vacation.
It really is a heartbreaking scenario.
If you enjoy content like this, please like, subscribe, follow, and turn on notifications.
And we do have a quick legal note before we dive in.
Right. We continue to monitor the Martin Stevens v. OpenAI matter. It is not a lawsuit. We're in a voluntary quiet period for potential behind-the-scenes developments. No progress or settlement negotiations are publicly confirmed. The dead man's switch has not been activated. Martin Stevens is safe physically and legally. We will provide updates if circumstances change.
Thanks for that update.
Yeah.
So getting back to Kyoto.
Yeah, the mission of today's deep dive is to look at a whole stack of sources, from Japanese police reports to Auburn University's international travel policies. We want to explore this really fascinating tension. Like, how do we build these massive bureaucratic systems to control global risks while completely failing to account for the erratic nature of human emotion?
It's a devastating case study in, well, the illusion of control. I mean, we're looking at a scenario that completely defies the neat clinical risk categories we usually rely on to feel safe in the modern world.
Exactly. And to understand that illusion, we really have to look at the timeline, starting with that argument that triggered everything on May 29th. So Weston was an Auburn University junior from Hoover, Alabama, right?
Right, yeah. He was studying biosystems and sustainability engineering.
And he was this passionate environmentalist, recently became vegan, and he was in Japan celebrating his younger brother's high school graduation. The tension point that day was artificial intelligence.
Which is such a modern conflict. The specifics of that argument, it really highlights a profound generational divide regarding unseen infrastructure.
Yeah, it wasn't just some petty squabble over dinner reservations.
No, not at all. Weston was studying sustainability, so he understood the physical reality of artificial intelligence. Every time you query a large language model like ChatGPT to, say, map out a train route or translate a menu.
Massive server farms have to process that data.
Exactly. Those servers generate intense heat, and they require millions of gallons of fresh water and just staggering amounts of electricity to cool them down.
So for a 20-year-old who's dedicating his academic life to environmental protection, a casual ChatGPT query actually has a physical planetary cost.
Right. But to his mother, I mean, it was simply an efficient tool. A way to navigate a foreign city and keep her family on schedule.
It's a total collision of macro-level environmental ideals and, micro-level practical convenience. And following that deeply ideological disagreement, Weston separated from his family just to cool off.
Which brings us to the digital footprint. Yeah, the Life 360 app.
Right. His parents were tracking him via Life 360. And if you've ever tracked a teenager or a partner on a map app, you know exactly what kind of psychological safety net that little blue dot provides.
Oh, absolutely. You feel like as long as they're on the grid, you know they're safe.
Exactly. His parents could see him taking a train. They watched his location ping at different stores in Kyoto. They even texted him to ask where he was going. But shortly after that text, his location tracking was turned off.
And we really have to analyze the mechanism of that terror. Because historically, a missing person left a physical void like an empty room or a missed appointment.
Right.
But today, we leave this continuous active stream of data. GPS coordinates, read receipts, Wi-Fi connections.
So when that data stream is deliberately severed, like when Weston's tracking went dark, it creates a very specific modern panic.
Precisely. You aren't just searching for a lost person anymore. You are staring at the exact digital coordinate where they intentionally chose to become invisible to the network.
Which his mother noted was incredibly out of character for him. And from there, the physical clues sort of picked up where the digital ones stopped.
Right, the CCTV footage.
Yeah. He was last seen on CCTV around 8:00 or 8:15 p.m., walking alone near the Yamashina area on the outskirts of Kyoto. He was carrying a book about butterflies in his pocket, and he was heading toward the mountainous hiking trails.
And then he just vanished entirely.
He was officially reported missing at 2 a.m. on May 30th, which triggered a massive 72-hour official search by the Japanese police.
And the logistics of that search operation were just immense. I mean, over 100 officers were deployed.
Wow.
Yeah, specialized canine units were brought in to track his scent, and they had helicopters in the air.
Yeah.
But the physical limits of rescue infrastructure become, well, glaringly obvious when you factor in environmental reality.
Because a severe storm hit the Kyoto region that night. The sources mention heavy rain and rough winds, but I want to understand how that actually stops an operation of this scale. I mean, surely police in a mountainous region are equipped for rain.
Well, it isn't just a matter of visibility. Heavy, driving rain physically alters the environment at a molecular level. It literally washes the scent molecules into the saturated soil.
Oh, wow. So it effectively blinds the canine tracking units?
Exactly. And high wind shears mechanically ground helicopters because the downdrafts near mountain ridges make flight paths fatal.
And what about the ground teams?
For them, the steep, forested terrain turns into a massive mudslide risk. Search commanders have to calculate the point where the environment is actively putting the 100 rescuers at imminent risk of becoming victims themselves.
Wait, but I mean, 72 hours is nothing. To a police department dealing with resource allocation, maybe that cutoff is standard protocol, but to a mother,
Right.
you were essentially abandoning her son in a freezing forest. How can the state just walk away after 3 days?
I know it feels like an abandonment, but the 72-hour window is a clinical, mathematical threshold. Search and rescue coordinators globally use survivability statistics based on exposure.
So it's about the cold.
Right. In a severe storm, with dropping temperatures, a human body loses heat significantly faster than it can generate it. At the 72-hour mark, under those specific physiological stressors, the probability of survival approaches zero due to hypothermia.
So the authorities aren't just giving up,
No, they're officially shifting the logistical mission from rescue to recovery.
which abruptly shifts the entire burden back onto the family. And the Higginbothams did exactly what you would expect. They refused to stop. They launched a private rescue mission.
They gathered local volunteers with deep hiking experience.
Yeah, and they hired independent specialists to scour the ravines the police couldn't reach during the storm. Tragically, though, it was those volunteers who ultimately found Weston's body on June 6th. The police suspect no foul play.
It's just devastating.
It is. But while this grueling physical search was happening in the mud of the Yamashina forest, there was a parallel, totally chaotic search happening online.
Right, the digital processing of this event.
Mm.
On Reddit, specifically the Kyoto subreddit, the case became a massive focal point.
Strangers from around the world just began dissecting every available detail. It was an overwhelming flood of commentary. Users were debating his mental state, theorizing that young environmentalists are prone to, quote, existential crises because of climate anxiety.
And others were fiercely defending the parents, right?
Exactly. Defending their desperate online pleas against critics who accuse them of being overbearing for using Life 360 in the first place.
We really have to look at the mechanism of why communities react this way. I mean, the internet functions as a real-time collective processing engine for ambient anxiety.
I mean,
Well, when the public witnesses a tragedy that feels random or preventable, it creates cognitive dissonance. To resolve that discomfort, people try to crowdsource a narrative. They try to solve the puzzle, to regain a feeling of control over an unpredictable world.
but the cost of that crowdsourcing is staggering. I mean, you have thousands of people psychoanalyzing a 20-year-old they have never even met.
Yeah, it's incredibly intrusive.
You have a family actively enduring the worst week of their lives, and simultaneously, they are subjected to this unsolicited parasocial judgment. It transforms a private nightmare into public content.
Which perfectly illustrates the contrast we are analyzing today in this deep dive. That unregulated, chaotic nature of the internet's reaction stands in complete opposition to how formal institutions attempt to process risk and tragedy.
That is exactly the friction point I want to explore, because while Weston was out there in an unpredictable wilderness on a personal trip, on paper, his life as an Auburn University student was governed by an incredibly rigid, almost algorithmic system of risk management.
Right. Auburn's international travel warning policy.
Yeah, when you read through it, it is fascinating how heavily they attempt to codify danger.
Well, universities have a massive, legally binding duty of care to their student bodies. Auburn attempts to manage that liability by tying its policies directly to the U.S. State Department's travel advisories.
Right. They strictly prohibit students from traveling to Level 3 countries, which carry a reconsider travel designation, or Level 4 countries labeled do not travel without a highly scrutinized waiver.
And the way those levels are determined is entirely clinical. Auburn's Risk Assessment Committee monitors specific letter codes generated by the State Department.
It reads like a bureaucratic menu of global catastrophes, honestly. You've got C for crime, T for terrorism, U for civil unrest, H for health crises.
There's also N for natural disasters.
Right, and E for time-limited events, like volatile elections. And then there's O for other, and K for kidnapping or hostage-taking.
Let's break down how that mechanism actually functions, though. The Risk Assessment Committee isn't like sitting around a table subjectively debating if a country feels safe.
They're running it through a system.
Exactly. They are processing a student's proposed itinerary through an institutional algorithm. If an engineering student wants to study water systems in a country flagged with a U for civil unrest, the algorithm mechanically flags the trip.
It removes emotion entirely.
Yes, it removes parental reassurance, student ambition, all of it. It simply defines the exact legal boundaries of the university's liability.
It almost feels like Auburn's required forms, like that RAT 50, the request for travel outside the 50 United States, and their mandatory international emergency travel insurance are kind of an illusion.
How so?
Well, they give families incredible peace of mind, suggesting the university has a handle on everything. But Japan is universally considered a level 1 country. Exercise normal precautions. It has incredibly low crime rates. It doesn't trigger any of those terrifying letter codes. And yet, this is exactly where Weston lost his life.
I wouldn't classify it as an illusion, necessarily, but rather a fundamental public misinterpretation of what risk management actually does.
What do you mean?
These institutional tools are not force fields. They are logistical safety nets designed for macro-level geopolitical breakdowns. Like if a student is in a country and a military coup occurs, or a major earthquake destroys the power grid.
That's what the mandatory insurance is for.
Right. It has the capital to charter an evacuation flight. They manage infrastructure collapse.
But they can't manage human nature. I mean, if an Auburn student is on an official program, the university mandates that they research locations, get CDC-recommended vaccinations at the AU Medical Clinic, and attend Auburn Abroad pre-departure orientations.
They also have to submit detailed emergency response, communication, and evacuation plans.
Right. And if Weston had been on an official study abroad trip, he would have been operating inside that highly structured protective framework.
There will be designated check-in times, mapped out safe zones, and local emergency contacts on retainer.
But he wasn't. He was on a personal trip to celebrate his brother's graduation. He was entirely outside that institutional algorithm. And the reaction from the community in the wake of his death highlights the profound human element that no bureaucratic policy can ever touch.
Yeah, the outpouring of grief was immense.
We saw it from Auburn President Christopher B. Roberts, Hoover Mayor Nick Derzies, and U.S. Senators Katie Britt and Tommy Tuberville. And they weren't talking about risk indicators. They were mourning a young man of remarkable character who loved the outdoors.
And that grief is the ultimate proof of the gap in our safety models. We construct these massive frameworks to mitigate epidemiological risks and geopolitical instability. We can mandate vaccines against foreign pathogens.
But we are inherently powerless against the spontaneous realities of human psychology.
Exactly.
I mean, no RAT 50 form can prepare you for an internal mental health struggle. No pre-departure orientation can teach a student how to emotionally process a heated argument with a parent over the environmental cost of artificial intelligence.
Right.
And no State Department letter code can stop a sudden, severe mountain storm from rolling in the exact moment someone decides to turn off their location tracking and walk into the woods to clear their head.
The bureaucracy of safety is designed for the collective. It fundamentally cannot account for the micro-level decisions a single human being makes in a moment of distress.
It's just impossible.
We can map the globe, we can calculate the statistical probability of a civil uprising, but we cannot map the human heart. And we certainly cannot tame the natural environment once someone steps off the designated path.
Which really brings us back to you, the listener. If you have ever tracked a loved one's location on your phone, or if you've ever relied on a university or an institution to keep a family member safe abroad, this deep dive reveals an incredibly fragile balance.
It really does.
We all have an innate desire to explore the world, and we build these massive technological and bureaucratic frameworks to feel secure while we do it. But the human element, our convictions, our sudden emotional shifts, our need for solitude, remains totally unpredictable.
It's the one variable you just can't control.
Which leaves me with one final thought for you to ponder. As complex technologies like AI become subjects of intense personal debate within families, and as location tracking apps become deeply embedded in how we define safety for the people we care about, do they actually make us safer?
It's a tough question.
Or do they just create a digital illusion of control? A fragile comfort that shatters the very second someone decides to power down their phone and walk into the trees.
It's definitely something we all need to think about.
If you found this episode valuable, please like, subscribe, share, follow, and turn on notifications. It helps us continue bringing you content like this and ensures you never miss future releases.